Hey everyone, this is Chris Bolts, and I'm coming in with another video today. Now, I did a Fantastic Four video earlier, and as I was doing that video, I saw this video pop up from Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire, on the Fantastic Four as well. And normally, Matt Walsh doesn't dive too much into pop culture. In fact, he tends to denigrate pop culture, especially when it comes to video games and anime, and he gets kind of roasted for that by a lot of people on our side of the space, like from Geeks and Gamers and Derek Anderson, the DA, whatnot. But every now and then he does have a take that I wanted to go ahead and take a look at. And this one right here, the title of this video is Fantastic Four is Just More Marvel Slop. Now, on its face, that title is absolutely correct. It is more Marvel slop, if you will, even though I like this movie pretty much. But that doesn't negate the fact that a lot of stuff that came out from Marvel has just been that, slop. But let me go ahead and take a look at his video. I wanted to go ahead and see what his view on the entire matter was and give my take on it and see if there's some disagreement here or there, or if there is some agreement. And if you guys wanted to watch this video without my commentary, I will link it in the description without my commentary. So you can go ahead and take a look at that for yourself. But before I do get into this content, then make sure you like, share, subscribe, turn on those post notifications. All that stuff really does help me out. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get right off into this.
That's why most of these franchise films are terrible. It's why they're crap, because they don't start in the heart and soul of an artist. They start in a corporate boardroom. So we talk about the important things here. So let's go to From Variety. Marvel's first family might not save the day after all. The Fantastic Four is quickly losing steam in its second weekend, signaling the comic book adventure isn't connecting to the box office. After a healthy $117.6 million debut, suffered a hefty 66% drop. So, yeah. That's it. Okay, I don't need to give you all the numbers. 66% drop in the second weekend. It dropped 80% from Friday to Friday, which is pretty devastating. I mean, devastating if you work for Disney. I mean, not devastating for me, but and now a lot of people are offering their analysis on this. They're trying to figure out why the Fantastic Four is sort of losing steam so quickly. Trying to figure out why superhero films in general for the past 5 years or so, or probably longer, haven't been the surefire massive successes that they've been in the past. They still make a lot of money. They still make hundreds of millions of dollars, but that's really not impressive. You know, I think Fantastic Four at this point has made $80 million or something. Not impressive, because first of all, you've got like double that in marketing that goes into these. These are big name IPs. You know, spending tens and hundreds of millions of dollars in production, hundreds more in marketing. So when you're spending that kind of money, it's not impressive to make 100 million, 200 million. It's not impressive. You're not making any money on it. That's like baseline stuff.
And on that point, he is absolutely correct. Just making a few $100 million is basically the equivalent of pocket change. These companies are spending hundreds of millions of dollars in production costs, hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing costs, and they're not spending that kind of money to just make a few $100 million. They're spending that kind of money to try to make $1 billion. And that's part of the problem, is that they keep chasing the Avengers style type of success with these comic book movies, not realizing that they have they only struck lightning once. They captured lightning in a bottle once. And they can't replicate it anymore. And it's pretty much due to Disney Marvel's malfeasance. They decided to pursue other things other than just straight comic book movies. They do swaps where they're not required, and they insert political agendas where there don't need to be any. And this really damaged the entire brand, because for the longest time, Marvel has been the comic book brand, more so than DC. So he is right on that point. You're not making these movies to just make a few $100 million. You're making these movies to try to make $1 billion, but that's just not going to happen anymore.
So these movies are losing steam. And why is that? Well, it's because these movies are bad. Okay? I've been saying this forever. People always get upset. I think there's more people coming around to it. And these are just bad films. The superhero films, for the most part, they're just bad films. They're just not good. Like, that's all it is.
Now, on that point, he's right, but he's also not right. I would say that there are only even within the first phases of Marvel, there are only a handful of good films that you can really go back and look at. I mean, for me, it's Iron Man, Captain America, Winter Soldier, and that might be it. That might be it. Now, if they were playing on TV, and I own a lot of the first phase Marvel movies, not as many as I hope, but I definitely own Iron Man. I definitely own Winter Soldier. I think I own all the Spider-Man. But even of the Spider-Man, the only one that's really worth going back and watching is No Way Home. But yeah, when you sit down and really think about it, a lot of the Marvel Cinematic movies are not really good movies. They're not movies that will stand the test of time. Like, for instance, I'll just give one movie from the 80s, Terminator. I've seen Terminator probably 15 times, maybe. And I never get bored watching that movie whatsoever, even though I can recite the movie from beginning to end. Same with movies like Terminator 2, Predator, Star Wars, movies like that, Jaws. These are movies that you can watch over and over and over. You're not going to do that with a lot of the Marvel Cinematic movies. Like I said, maybe Iron Man. I think I've watched Iron Man 5 or 6 times. I've also watched The Incredible Hulk. The Edward Norton one. That one is vastly underrated. I've watched that one several times. Captain America: Winter Soldier. I've watched that several times. The number of movies that you can watch over and over and over within the Marvel Cinematic Universe is very small, and it's even worse for DC. The only ones that I can really watch consistently are the Dark Knight trilogy from Christopher Nolan. I've watched Batman Begins and The Dark Knight multiple times. Even the Tim Burton Batmans, I watched those quite a bit. The Christopher Reeve Superman, these are the older ones. These are not movies from the DC universe or from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, but I think what he is communicating is he just doesn't like these movies at all. He doesn't like these movies at all. He thinks they're all objectively bad, which I disagree with. I was just talking in terms of rewatchability, but I think he thinks all these movies are just objectively bad, which he's completely wrong on. They're not objectively bad, and the box office receipts prove that many of the earlier movies are not objectively bad. But definitely the Phase 4 and Phase 5 movies for Disney Marvel, as well as some of the movies for the DC movies, yeah, those are objectively bad.
And they haven't changed, by the way. Like if you say, oh, the superhero films don't do well anymore because they're so, they're bad now. No, they're kind of what they've always been. You go back and watch a superhero film from 2005, it's not like, oh yeah, well, this was a masterpiece. It's basically the same thing. That's the problem. Now, it's true of Fantastic Four in particular, and I made my point about Fantastic. I can't remember why, but I do recall talking about Fantastic Four one other time. I have no idea why. Now this is my second time revisiting it. But I think I made this point, which is that Fantastic Four is particularly lame. Like, these are especially lame superheroes. The whole squad is run by a guy whose only superpower is that he's really stretchy. I don't know what his origin story is. I don't remember. I think I saw. I mean, I don't know. Was there a Fantastic Four show back in the 90s? I've been around it a little bit. So, but I don't.
Yes, there was a Fantastic Four show in the 90s. There's also one in the 60s. And the origin for all the Fantastic Four is all the same. They all went out in a spaceship. They got hit by cosmic radiation. And they all got their powers. So it's simple enough. Now, as far as Reed Richards being a leader, it's a stretchy man. You can make stretchy powers work. I think somebody probably needs to go and talk to whoever's doing One Piece for Netflix, because they did an okay job with Monkey D. Luffy. They weren't all that impressive in Fantastic Four First Steps. So yeah.
Remember the origin story? Did he fall into a vat of rubber bands? Was he in some sort of like thing where his DNA was accidentally melded with a pair of Spanx? I don't know, but it's lame. It's a really lame power to have. It's only made worse by the fact that Marvel wants all these characters to exist in the same cinematic universe, but that just makes them even more redundant and useless. Like, there's no reason why you would ever call the stretchy guy to come help you in a world where, Thor exists, or Iron Man, or Captain America. And why do you need the big rock guy when you have the Hulk? These people, like, they're neighbors, right? They exist in the same world. They're not far apart. They have supersonic jets they get around in. I mean, the Hulk could be here in 5 seconds. Why would you ever want the rock guy?
Now, to be fair, Fantastic Four First Steps takes place in an alternate universe, Earth 868, and the main Marvel Cinematic Universe takes place in Marvel 616. But that, in and of itself, the criticism he makes is actually pretty sound in that they share a universe. And that makes storytelling very problematic. And we see that what happened when the Marvel Cinematic Universe started trying to introduce all these different types of characters, especially when you go to the television shows. Like, for instance, when the Avengers occurred, right after the Avengers occurred, we got Netflix Daredevil, but Marvel wanted Netflix Daredevil to be separate from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but at the same time, they wanted to be part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So they never really referenced directly the events of the what happened in the Avengers. They would just say the event in Daredevil. But then when you're looking at the Hell's Kitchen in Daredevil, like, wait a minute, why was that not impacted tremendously by what was going on in Avengers? Because you would have seen all that damage there. And then, of course, it got even worse when it got to the later ones, especially after Marvel of Avengers Endgame, where there was a 5-year time jump between Infinity War and Endgame. And then you try to do, when they try to go into the future events of Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness, a lot of the TV shows like Moon Knight, they couldn't explain what was going on there. So I'll just take on Moon Knight, and then I'll get back to Matt Walsh's take here. In Moon Knight, they introduced the concept of Egyptian gods, and Moon Knight obviously took place after Avengers Endgame. And so one of the questions that came up was, well, if all this stuff was going down with Avengers Endgame, where are you gods? And they had some type of lame excuse, which basically said, oh, we don't get involved in the affairs of men. What? You don't want to get involved in the affairs of men, but yet now you're getting involved with the affairs of men within Moon Knight. It makes no sense. It made no sense. Having one shared universe was a fun thing for a while, but it should have really ended after Endgame. And don't even get me started on the multiverse nonsense.
And the Avengers have this problem on their own squad, because they've got the who's the guy with the arrows? Hawkeye. I was just talking to my son about this the other day, and because I didn't know this, I'd always thought, well, this guy's pretty useless, isn't he? He just has arrows. Why do you need a guy with arrows? Why would you ever need that? But I assumed that, well, they must be special arrows, magical arrows. He must be some kind of magical, archer guy. But my son was telling me he has no superpowers at all. He's just a normal guy with arrows. Now, why in God's name would you ever need him, practically speaking? You have a superhuman alien god, right, who can fly, and then you've got a strong guy who could throw a tank across the stratosphere. You've got a magical super soldier. You've got Iron Man with his magic suit. In what scenario would you ever have those dudes, and they're facing something where they go, we need a guy with arrows for this. We need a guy who can shoot an arrow 150 yards.
It's obvious he did not watch Avengers. It's obvious that Matt Walsh did not watch Avengers because there were some scenarios. They addressed some of that within the movie about Clint Barton and Natasha Romanoff, Hawkeye and Black Widow, respectively, not having powers, and how they were able to go in there and contribute in certain ways, but despite the fact not having any type of powers. So that movie actually explains why they were still considered valuable members of the team. And at the time, because Avengers was so well done, we bought into the believability of these two non-powered heroes being able to do things and hang with the likes of Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, and Hulk. But, and this is a favorite word of Robert Myra Burnett, the verisimilitude of the Marvel Cinematic Universe gets broken the minute you start doing things that are ridiculous and foolish. Like I just explained earlier about the Egyptian gods being introduced through Moon Knight, who didn't get involved with the events of Endgame by saying something stupid like, "Oh, we don't want to get involved with the affairs of men," when in fact that's exactly what they're doing inside of Moon Knight. When you start doing weird, stupid stuff like that, their mind automatically goes, "Wait a minute, that's not believable." When you go in there and you turn Sam Wilson into Captain America, despite the fact he never took the super serum, and he's fighting the Red Hulk, people go, "Well, wait a minute, that's not believable." And so then you go back and start questioning all the other stuff that goes along with your missiles, along with your fantasy. Wait a minute. Why do you need a guy that only shoots arrows as part of the Avengers? Why do you need a woman who's just nothing but a spy as part of your team of superheroes? What exactly is she going to do? If she's a woman and she's not as skilled as a man, why do you need her on the team? And so that gets all broken right there. So Matt Walsh, at least from that perspective, makes a pretty good point.
You need a guy that was really, that was in Boy Scouts and got the archery badge. So it doesn't make any sense. What was my point? Fantastic Four is lame. That's my point. And superhero movies in general are just not good films. And that's why the genre is dying, because these movies are shallow, they're repetitive, they're dull. It's the same thing over and over again. There's no soul, there's no heart. What started as an idea.
We're just going to go ahead and skip that part where he was getting ready to hawk his shit and everything like that, and just go back to the other part about why the movies are dying. I've been saying for years that superhero fatigue has been real. I remember making a comment on Valiant Renegade's channel way back in the day when he was still starting out. He's kind of blown up now. He's almost up to 100,000 subscribers. And the super chat I had sent him was that these Marvel Cinematic movies are on a bell curve. And basically, your phase 1 going all the way to phase 3, at the top of that bell curve is Avengers Endgame. And then you come back on the downside, on the other side of that bell curve, you just started seeing the diminishing returns set in on those movies. Now, granted, not a lot of these movies will get back to the level of an Avengers Endgame. However, if these movies were still in a healthy space, they would still be doing consistently close to anywhere from 800 million to $1 billion. But what you've been seeing, starting with No Way Home, Spider-Man No Way Home, was that, that movie hit over $1 billion. And then it went down to Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, 800 million. Wakanda Forever, 800 million. And it just kept going down from there as the quality of these movies started setting in. And then there was a temporary blip with Deadpool and Wolverine. Still don't understand how that movie does well, because that movie is a shitty movie. That movie is a shitty movie with likable characters, but it hit $1 billion because it tapped into nostalgia. But then it did not stop the reversal of the trend of the superhero movies. They just have been on a downward trend ever since then. And that's because diminishing returns sets in for everything. There would have been an eventual time that superhero movies would have been done, but I think the pace at which the fatigue set in is much quicker because the quality of the movies have been so bad. Superhero movies would have eventually faded out as a favorite genre, just like the cowboys and the Western movies have. But the pace was hastened by the sheer lack of quality in these movies. So he certainly got a point right there that it was they're bad movies and they're redundant and they're repetitive, and it's all part of superhero fatigue. I've been saying that for a long time. I know a lot of people in our space were saying it's bad movie fatigue. But as the great Razor Fist said, and I said great Razor Fist, but by the way, I think I've dealt with Razor Fist in the past because he used to work at this comic store over in Mesa on the East Valley called Atomic Comics. And for the longest time, I would go to Atomic Comics and I would shoot the shit with the people there and buy my comics from that store. He probably doesn't remember me or anything like that, but he said bad movies are a symptom of superhero fatigue. It's just that we didn't want, a lot of people on our side of the space did not want to come to that realization. Like, no, when the facts are in front of you, you have to look at the facts. And thankfully, a lot of people now are looking at the facts. Yes, superhero fatigue is real. It has set in. People don't want to see these movies anymore. And I know Ryan Cannell thinks that Avengers Doomsday will do well. Like, no, I don't think Avengers Doomsday will do well at all. There's no connective tissue between the audience and between the characters that are going to feature in Avengers Doomsday that will make people want to go and watch that. It's just going to be another superhero movie. Hopefully it's done well, but I don't think people are going to go check that movie out. Let's get back to Matt Walsh and let him finish up.
And people weren't interested in that, so Hollywood gave up on it. But this is a genre that has stood the test of time, and it's interesting because the superhero movies are very redundant. It's the same thing over and over and over again. It's the same plot beats over and over and over again. Sometimes literally the same story. How many times are they going to show the origin story of these guys? Like, how many times do you need to see that? How many versions of that do you need? It's the same story over and over again. But then you think about something like Westerns, and you could point out that, well, I'm a big Western fan, and Westerns can be, they follow a formula too. They're pretty formulaic, or they can be.
I'm going to just stop them right there. And yes, both Westerns and comic book movies can be formulaic, and just about a point about them telling the origin story. That, at least if there's one good thing about both Superman and Fantastic Four and what they did, is they skipped the origin story. I think Fantastic Four did theirs a little better than Superman. They, instead of giving you a scroll of words like he did in Superman, they actually gave you snippets and told, they being the Fantastic Four, told through this television host the exploits of the Fantastic Four and why everybody liked the Fantastic Four. It would have been cool in Superman if they wanted to do that scrolling montage. They should have did something similar to Star Wars. Just give a really nice, good synopsis of what was going on with Superman within his first 3 years before that movie. But the way they did it was just like cheesy CW-ness, which was just wonky and weird. But yes, and if you think about a lot of these superhero movies, it's like a roller coaster ride. You got your introduction, you got your rising point and everything like that. You got your peak, for lack of a better term. You got the climax, and then you got the drop down as everything gets ready to come to a resolution, and then the movie ends. It's like a roller coaster ride. So there's nothing really new there or anything. And it's been it can work if you keep telling good stories. But once you tell bad stories and it's consistent, again, the Robert Meyer Burnett word, the verisimilitude. I hope I'm saying that word right, by the way. The verisimilitude of the mythos and of the lore and of the movie blows up. And people are like, well, what? The spell is broken. Everybody begins to discover that there isn't a wizard behind the curtain. It's just a man. And you don't want the spell to be broken, because if the spell gets broken, you're not going to be making money. And the thing about the thing about the Westerns is that it does follow a trope. I'll just give you two examples, and I like both shows, by the way. The Rifleman and Gunsmoke. James Arness as Gunsmoke, Matt Dillon, and Chuck Connors in The Rifleman. I forgot the name of his name in The Rifleman. But you can switch those two characters around. In fact, they are almost the exact same height. I think both men are like 6'5", 6'6", same height, same weight. You can switch both men around in both of those stories, and both of them would still work, because they're the righteous cowboy fighting in the Wild West against bandits, against the outlaws, trying to uphold order and decency within a town that's on the outskirts of civilization. So let's get back to Matt Walsh.
Very similar beats. A lot of Westerns feature the brooding loner guy, right? A lot of them end with the big shootout at the end. Often you've got a bad guy who's trying to kick somebody off of their land. I mean, this was the formula way back with Shane in the 1950s, and now here we are 70 plus years later, and when a Western is made, it's the same basic formula. And I love the formula. I've seen 100 Westerns that all have that same formula. I love every single one. I've seen them all multiple times. And why is that? It's because there's they have heart. They have a soul. Like, they're actual films. These are works of art. There's humanity to it, right? And that's why it stands the test of time. It feels like something real, like, right? It feels like art. It feels like cinema. And these superhero movies are just not. It's like.
And I'm going to also agree with him on that. This is another reason why I want superhero fatigue to really take hold in America, because the people that are doing these superhero movies, I mentioned this in my review for Superman, they really do not believe in the superhero. They don't believe in the superhero archetype. And the reason they can't believe in the superhero archetype is because they can't believe in America. If you think about a lot of these superheroes, especially like the ones like Superman is just a stand-in for America. And Captain America is even more blatant. Captain America is a stand-in for America. If you can't believe in your own country, why the hell do you think you can sit there and write a movie about a superhero who was a stand-in for America? As an allegory for America. If you don't understand a hero, how can you make a movie about a hero? These things, that's why it's so important to pass on culture from one generation to the next. It's a shame that our current generation is so enamored with anime. I love anime. My channel basically is focused on anime and Western pop culture. So I'm not trying to sit here and diss anime in and of itself as a form of entertainment. However, it should not be the main source of entertainment for American children, for Americans in general. Anime is Japanese culture. Superheroes are American culture. I would want more Americans to be reading comic books about American heroes than they are reading manga about Japanese heroes. Manga is there to promote Japanese values and advance their culture. Same way with the anime. American superheroes should be used there to promote American culture and values. But we have people who are in charge of these properties who do not like American culture, who do not like American values. So the slop that we get in these movies reflect exactly what they think about America. Wouldn't it have been cool in Fantastic Four First Steps if on that ship you had the red, white, and blue going to visit the Galactus on his ship, and America is standing there against Galactus and saying, "No, you are not going to destroy the Earth. We're here not just as representatives of Earth. We are here as representative as America. America is a representation of Earth to you, and we are going to defend the Earth by any means necessary from you." No, you're not going to get that from this current Hollywood generation, for lack of a better word, because they don't believe that. They find America to be a problem. The same way with Superman. Why couldn't Superman say truth, justice, and the American way? What shame do you have for your own country? I mean, James Gunn has the temerity to blame anti-American sentiment for why Superman is not doing well internationally. Dummy, everybody already knows Superman is an American hero. So why do you have a problem with just saying truth, justice, and the American way? I mean, what way do you think is better than the American way?
Scorsese said they're theme park rides. Scorsese, who I think knows a thing or two about making great films, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, and it doesn't mean he's right about everything, but he was right about this. And when you've got a guy like that who's, and that should, the filmmakers it's not often that you'll hear them just writing off entire genres. They don't typically do that. Usually filmmakers love films. They love all genres. But one thing you'll hear from the really great film, and he's not the only one, but the really great directors, you'll often, if there's candid moments when you kind of reveal like they're not really into this. And why? It's just because it's not a film. It's a theme park ride. It's an amusement park ride, basically. And that's all they're made to be. They're not even made to be films. They're not made to tell a story. They're made to sell merchandise. They're made to cash in on an IP, right? That's the only reason they exist. And yes, every movie exists ultimately to make money. Somebody wants to make money off of it. But with the superhero movies, it's purely that. This is a corporate boardroom. They sat around and said, okay, here's this IP. How are we going to cash in on it this time? That's the beginning of the film, right? That's where the film starts. And you can never have a good film that starts that way. If it's going to be if any chance of a great film, it has to start with an artist in their own head, in their own heart, and they have a story that they want to tell. And then, they got to bring in the money people. They got to bring in the producers. They got to bring in all this. They got to get funding. Sometimes the story gets watered down. Sometimes it's ruined in that process, but it's got to start with someone saying, this story means something to me and I want to tell it. And if it doesn't start with that, you're going to end up with a movie. And that's why most of these franchise films are terrible. It's why they're crap. Because they don't start in the heart and soul of an artist. They start in a corporate boardroom. They start with a freaking chart and a whiteboard in their and bar graphs, and that's where they start. Okay. And AI. Now that too. Really, now they start with AI. And that's what they're going to be made with also. So, not a fan. If you'd like to see what else
All right. So actually, that last part, I let it play out fully. And Matt Walsh is exactly right about these movies starting in a corporate boardroom. And man that I really respect, I think is basically the professor of nerd culture, Robert Meyer Burnett, said the exact same thing. That corporations are going in there and ruining storytelling with these movies. And while I don't think necessarily agree that, well, I do. I do agree that these movies are made for merchandising, but it's very possible to go in there and make these movies about merchandising, or rather make these movies and make them good merchandising films as well. Case in point, one of the greatest merchandising films of all time is Star Wars. But the thing, it didn't start off that way. First, it started off with George Lucas wanted to tell a story about these space people who are fighting this cosmic war against this galactic thing called the Empire. He wanted to tell that story. A lot of corpos said, nah, I don't think that'll work. He set out on his own. He made the movie. It did well. It then led to a lot of merchandising, and the rest is history. So he is exactly right about that. And in fact, going back, I was listening to Yellow Flash earlier, and he was talking about something that Bo DeMayo being the zesty former showrunner for X-Men 97. And let's just go ahead and I'm going to scroll through. I want to try to find it, what he said, because he was talking about how someone in the executive offices was giving him a hard time about the creative process for Marvel, for rather X-Men 97. Let me just try to find it. I think it was today, I think. Or was it yesterday? Here we go, right here. Let's pull this up right here. And I'm just going to read this right here. And I saw this first on Yellow Flash, so I want to give him credit for that. Bo DeMayo, I say this with a lot of love because I love Marvel and its characters, but I'll give you a peek at how bad the state is there. In season 2 of X-Men 97, I adapted the Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix comic. In it, Scott and Jean used their childhood nicknames for each other, Slim and Red respectively, to keep their identities hidden from Nathan. The current VP of Marvel Animation, Dana Vasquez Eberhard, who despised me, comes at me for how stupid the nicknames are and how she agreed with another director that they just couldn't take the nickname seriously and that I need to, quote, turn my comic collector brain off, unquote. I explained that the aliases are Jean and Scott's pet names for their teenage years, which resonates nicely with the fact that they're now raising Nathan. They're wistful and choose the names accordingly. The nickname speaks to that feeling all new parents have of losing their youth and past selves. In the end, Dana shut me out of the process. This was after Dana and I had to have a stupid fight over Ozymandias in season 2. She felt I was putting too much lore in and that we should just call him a random, quote, warlord, unquote. When you have creatives who have spent half their day having arguments of items like this instead of polishing and plussing the show, especially after having proven your vision works, is beyond offensive and demoralizing. I'm going to go ahead and give that one a like. But yes, that is exactly correct. We have too many corpos that are there that stand in the way of creativity and don't understand that before you can make the money, you got to do the creation first. You got to do the creation, put it out there, and if it makes money, great. If it doesn't make money, then you go back to the drawing board. Too many of the corporals nowadays are risk averse. They don't want to gamble with the money, despite the fact that they have lots of money and they spend hundreds of millions of dollars on these movies. They would rather say, hey, we want to spend $200 million on a movie plus $200 million for marketing, instead of saying, you know what, let's just spend $10 million on a small idea and let's see if that would grow. Go ahead and try to see how easy it is to plant a full grown tree as opposed to planting a seed and doing the work and making that seed grow into a giant sequoia. Go ahead. Let's see how successful that is. It's the same here with the creation aspect of this. And with that, Matt Walsh is definitely right. So once again, I'm going to leave that video in my description if you guys want to watch without my commentary. Make sure you guys do like, share, subscribe, turn on the post notifications. All that stuff really does help me out. And remember, this is Chris Boltz signing off, and I will catch you guys in the next video. You take it easy.